Good morning, Natasha. Good morning, Roslyn. Good morning, Glency. Good morning, Dana. Good morning, Mia. Good morning, Deborah. Good morning. Good morning, Brother Hodari. Good morning, siblings, Tamil, Shayla, Irie. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Byron. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. 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 Should have get a clear-eyed view of my great-grandmother over there. It's Mamie McDonald, Ashe. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Let me see if I can. That's also her right there. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. That is Alice Walker behind me. Ashe. This picture right here are my great-great-grandparents, Addie and J.K. Stewart, Tifton, Georgia. Ashe, I say their names. It's my grandmother over here to my left. You can't see that picture. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Across from me, I am sitting in direct alignment, aligning to my ancestral altar, our ancestral altar, the altar of our family, Ashe, for those that we identify as ancestors, those who have gone before us and who are now have transitioned from time to eternity, who are lights into our path, lights, lamps to our feet, guides to our path, who lived in a particular way, who lived lives with integrity and in honor. Those who possessed energies that kept our family, that kept our people, those that contributed to society, those who displayed those who displayed integrity and tenacity and creativity and strength, those who spoke when they wanted to be silent, or those who spoke when even though silence would have been more convenient, they spoke anyway. Those who spoke, even because the thing is that no matter how beholden one is to the oppressors, I'm just jumping right in, there'll come a point when the oppressor will force you to speak. It will force your hand. Yes, thank you, E.I. Renee. And so I want to invite us by way of calling us to community this morning, because that's what this is. This is a call to community. By way of calling us to community this morning, I want you to call on your ancestors. I want you to I want you to be strategic with the names that you call. I want you to call on the names of those ancestors whom you knew had the ability to speak truth, both our collective ancestors. So a collective ancestor would be those that we share together as a community, as a people, those who had the ability to speak two systems. And we call energies and the energies of these ancestors, much like folks will. There is much to say. My heart is really heavy and big, and many things are racing through my mind. So let me just breathe for a minute to back up. For some of you who are new here, let me back up for a minute to just introduce you to what this community is, Ashe, and to who we are and to what we do, because we are about to have some meditation, some conversation, and some reflection. I am the Reverend Dr. Melva L. Sampson, and I am the creator and curator of Pink Robe Chronicles. Pink Robe Chronicles is an online gathering that centers faith and spirituality from a theologically progressive, womanist, Pan-African, and Afrofuturist interpretive lens. This community, this online community, is guided by the Nguzo Saba, faith, creativity, purpose, unity, cooperative economics, collective work and responsibility, and self-determination. Heavy on the self-determination. These chronicles, the chronicles, we use sacred texts to illuminate and practice the philosophy of Ubuntu. We believe that Jesus was a political prisoner and faith leader who was ultimately executed by a scandalous government. We believe his witness of and to a new way of being in the world that repositions those in last position to first, that redistributes wealth from the center to the margin, and that provides a template for ethical and just living that liberates us from the fear of multiple deaths. We are ordained clergy, seminarians, graduate students, professors, attorneys, higher education professionals, administrative specialists, entrepreneurs, labor workers, stylists, degreed and non-degreed. Here in this space, we are Christian, Muslim, humanist, priests and priestesses. We are Bible readers and Bible scholars. We are preachers, artists, and activists. We are gold diggers and truth to power speakers. We believe that heavy on the that all Black lives are sacred and that Black love is revolutionary. We are straight, lesbian, gay, transgender, intersex, bi, queer, and or questioning. Our other community, our sister community that happens right after Pink Robe Chronicles, which is our subscription community. It is where we go to unpack, to talk back to the text. It is our digital hush harbor. It is where we gather beyond the gaze of those who seek to oppress us. The Clearing then is a digital hush harbor that augments Pink Robe Chronicles to provide a more in-depth critical engagement with selected text. Like Pink Robe Chronicles, The Clearing is a radically inclusive and spiritually expansive space. I will, in a few seconds, I will provide to you a link for those of you. Actually, I will do it right now, because when we get into our conversation, I don't want to have to stop. Yes, Sister Akila, we got to lay the foundation. I need folks to know where they are, Ashe. I am going to provide this link for those of you who are interested in joining our subscription community, our Clearing. I just put the link here on Facebook and here on YouTube. Ashe, good morning to our viewers on YouTube, to our viewers on Facebook. Good morning. Why was it important to ground us? We needed to be grounded, Ashe, because we need to have a conversation. We need to engage in some truth telling. We need to engage in some, I'm engaging in fugitive pedagogy, or at least naming this act of fugitive reflection, or us moving in fugitivity, or maybe fugitive womanist preaching, Ashe, or that womanist Afro-centered preaching is fugitive preaching. And I want to name that from Dr. Jarvis Givens in his book, Fugitive Pedagogy. Some of you may have been online this week when I was the keynote for the National Benevolent Association and their seminar. I framed my remarks around fugitivity, around fugitive pedagogy, and around this idea of stealing ourselves back, if you will, from this notion of fugitivity. So I'm going to invite us to consider this notion of stealing possession of ourselves as we talk about acting into or being or not being silent anymore. Ashe. I interrupted my conversation, my introduction about ancestors, because it was important for me to ground who this community is, who I am, so that folks will not be confused, so that folks will not have to wonder where we stand, where I stand. Language is important, and it is important because much of the language we have, certainly our ancestors that were stolen from the continent of Africa and dispersed throughout the Caribbean and throughout the Americas, language was their primary way. Language is the primary way that we communicate. And when we are taken and when we are given a language that is foreign to us, many of our ways and beings, many of the ways that we know how we know, can get lost orally, not orally, in terms of how we hear, not necessarily how we speak, because of how we then take on the language of those who stole us, or how we take on the language of those who oppress, those who dominate. And so we have been socialized, missionized, and evangelized, if you will, to be fearful. Thank you, Natasha. To be fearful of words like ancestors. Fearful because in the missionizing of Black folk, indigenous folk, in the missionizing, this term ancestors, through movement, I'm making broad sweeps here, and I'm not, I don't really have the time to fully nuance because there's somewhere else that I want to get, but I think it's important that we start at the same place. This way, yes, language forms our worldview, Daniel Walper. Absolutely. It forms our worldview. But language, particularly if it is a language that has been forced on you, means that possibly your worldview is skewed. Your worldview then takes on the worldview of those that possess you. Your worldview takes on the worldview of those that dominate, of those that created a void. And so many of us, the way in which we fear certain languages, certain words, is because how we were socialized to believe, Ashe, that these words were problematic because those who stole folks, those who sold folks, could not fully understand the complexity, the intricacy, the beauty of both First Nation folk and indigenous people on the continent of Africa that were sold intertribally and then sold and to cross the many waters, to be brought here in shackles and chains, to be made to believe that their way of being and knowing was antithetical. Well, in many ways, it was antithetical. It was antithetical to chattel slavery. It was antithetical to this notion of this kind of construction, if you will, of the male God, this construction of capitalism and whiteness, it was antithetical and remains. Hence, some of us struggle with words like ancestors, even though the text that this Christian tradition, those of us who are a part of this Christian tradition or profess this tradition, ancestors in the Jewish tradition are very understandable. Yet, it is because we have been told that this idea of ancestry or ancestors or this veneration toward our ancestors is problematic and in somehow competition or kind of a worship, and there should not be worship of anything, any being other than God alone. But many folks worship Jesus, but that's a whole nother. So ancestors, just back real quick because I need us all to be on this same. I need us to start out right here. Our ancestors. Ancestors is not a mysterious word. It is not. It is a practice that is a must, meaning we cannot take two steps forward, not even one, without acknowledging those who have gone before us, those who have moved from time to eternity, those who have lived in a way that provide us guidance, those who give us action, the ability to engage in Sankofa, to go back to get what was lost, those for whom we venerate, just like Catholics venerate Mary, those that we venerate because of the lives that they lived. And so we call their names because we know attached to their names are particular capacities and energies that we need to live out the intentions we set, that if we engage them, that they will respond to us, that they will show us the path and the way. And so we call names of ancestors, of which Jesus is one. Ashe. Whew, my God. Hey! So I began this talk back by inviting you to call the names of individual and or collective ancestors that you need, that you request. I'm sorry, hold on. I just pointed out to those of you that I'm surrounded by them. My great-grandmother, my great-great-grandmother, and great-great-grandfather behind me. My grandmother's to the left of me. My mother-in-law, my father-in-law, many other ancestors are right in front of me at my altar. Yes, Brother Hodari, and I am full. One thing Mama Itihari always teaches us is, listen, don't call on the ancestors if you don't want them to come. And I want them to come this morning. I need them to come this morning as we engage in this fugitive practice of not being silent, as we engage in this fugitive practice of telling the truth. Fugitive pedagogy, it accounts for the physical and intellectual act of subversion. Fugitive pedagogy, in its ancient and modern historical meaning, generally refers to the enslaved fleeing from the dominant protocols of teaching and learning and the narrative scripts that structure these experiences. Let me run it back again. Fugitive pedagogy, in its ancient and modern historical meaning, generally refers to the enslaved fleeing from the dominant protocols of teaching and learning and the narrative scripts that structure these experiences. I'm going to read it one more time for the people in the back of the virtual room. Fugitive pedagogy, according to Dr. Jarvis Givens, professor of education at Harvard University. Fugitive pedagogy, ashe, in its ancient and modern historical meaning, generally refers to the enslaved fleeing from the dominant protocols of teaching and learning meaning and the narrative scripts that structure these experiences. I want to submit this morning that some of us are still not free. I want to submit this morning that many of us are still enslaved. Hence, it is necessary for us to engage this here language about fugitivity, about the enslaved fleeing. This morning's reflection is an invitation for us to flee the dominant protocols that have trapped and or entrapped us, so much so that we remain beholding to the teachings and learnings of particular narratives and scripts that allow or that call for parts of our community to be dominated, withheld, and or silent. As a result, we have relinquished possession of ourselves. Just follow me. Follow me. I haven't even given you a text yet, so follow me. Sit steady yourself and just follow me. Givens continues, as such, the entire approach of schooling is called into question when the Hill is called into question when the enslaved think and plot their own course of action, when their response is flight, when they steal possession of their own life. My goodness. Let me give you a moment. Let me give you a moment. Stealing possessions of our own lives. For the last 2 weekends, the Reverend Dr. Ebony Marshall Turman has shared with us what I am naming as sacred text. So not only have I restored the utility of the English word ancestors, which in Yoruba would be the Egungun, I am also now helping us to reframe or to understand to understand what sacred text is. Text, friends, are not just words that you read on pages. As a matter of fact, that kind of text has been used as a dominating force for many years. It has been used to wreak havoc on oral communities, oral traditions. It has been used by Europeans who forced their way onto land, much like those in our sacred text, for whom believe that it was God who told them to go take and or possess the land that other people already lived on, situating God as a tyrant, situating God as two-faced, situating God as having favorites. Hence, our very skewed understanding of favor, believing that it means that we are favorite because God chooses, and in God's choices, it means that some will lose out, that some will have to be forced off of land. And it is interesting then what we identify as sacred, that words written on text, that the ability ability to read and the order that we read is a kind of performance that was used to dominate and or control. Hence, back to this fugitive pedagogy, that our desire or to flee from these kinds of protocols, the dominant protocols of teaching and learning, or the narratives and scripts have dictated confidence, what we believe is holy and sacred. And so for some of us, we believe that the only kind of text that can be holy and or sacred is the text that we've been told, is the text that we have been told lies in these pages, lies in the pages that have been translated into digital space, into digital characters, that this somehow through our belief is the word, the only word of God. But if in those who believe in the Christian tradition of incarnation, believe that God becomes one of us, that joins us, then if this is the case, we would see that we, our very beings, our bodies are text, that our texts communicate, that when we show up, when we perform our traditions via dress, when we perform our politics via the way we show up, via the way we wear our hair, via the way we wear our culture, then indeed we are saying that these lives, that black lives, that all black lives, that black love is revolutionary, that it is indeed sacred. So I want to help you on this morning. Those of you who are looking for what text I am coming from in the Bible, I am shifting. I am decentering. I am saying, and some of you will drop off right now, and God bless you. We wish you well. I am saying that there is another sacred text that comes from the body and the being and the intellect and the spirit and the mind of a black woman. You will recall earlier this week that I posted a lament. I wondered, when will we pause our business as usual in our pulpits? When will we stop placating and pandering? When will we pause? When will we remove our egos? When will we move away from the lectionary, even if it's just for one Sunday, to talk about the business at hand? When will we bring these issues to the forefront? When will we move these laments, these critiques? When will we move them from our group chats? When will we remove them from online and begin to talk about them? When will we have these conversations? When will we acknowledge that words from black women are gospel? And so this morning, I want to lift up the words of this black woman. I don't care if you've already read it, I have not one care, because it's so sacred, it cannot be heard enough. And while we'll not be able to do all the talking here, we will do some, and then we're heading over to the clearing. But I may stay on just a little bit longer for those who are not a part of the clearing, just for us to share more. So be clear, this is sacred text. Be clear, this is fugitive pedagogy, most visible in fugitive preaching. These are the words from the prophet Ashe, Ebony Marshall Turman. Listen for a word from God. I have known since I was a little girl that I should not tell most women and girls don't. Instead, we shrink into the shadows and try to forget what really happened. We don't tell. We heed curious counsel to be quiet, to stand down and move on, as if doing so will make what happened go away. We submit to the lie that something is wrong with us, or that we did something wrong to invite harm. We soothe our shame with passive prayer and decontextualize scripture that glories in our unmerited suffering with promises of divine compensation in the next world. But we don't tell. The conspiracy of discipline of silence is a primary mechanism of gender violence. It punishes truth tellers. It shields perpetrators and lays fault at the feet of those who have been violated. As the historical record and contemporary legal studies indicate, the church has been conspiratorially complicit in meting out the discipline of silence against women and children who have been harmed by its leadership and laity for generations. And this must stop. Black feminist theory and womanist ethics contend for naming and truth-telling, that is, calling a thing, as prerequisites for the task of freedom, dreaming, and justice-making. And as Jesus says, the truth will set you free in John 8:31. In my essay, quote, Black and Blue, Uncovering the Ecclesial Cover-Up of Black Women's Bodies Through a Womanist Reimagining of the Doctrine of the Incarnation, end quote, I underscore that there are consequences for Black women who break rank with anti-Black patriarchy in Black churches and tell particular truths about misogynoir in the church. We have but to consider the legacies of freedom fighters like Ida B. Wells Barnett, Nannie Helen Burroughs, Ella Baker, and even Anita Hill, all of whom were silenced and disparaged by the Black church and its clergy, some of whom were expelled from the church altogether, and others who walked out on their own accord. Let's be crystal clear. The church will double down against Black women in an effort to paint particular situations of gender bias as individual rather than systemic. The church will gaslight toward the respectability of silence. It will demonize Black women by equating them with evil, the devil, and the unprevailing gates of hell. The church will make false equivalencies and spin disingenuous stories of Black women's incompetence, inexperience, unsuitability, and unfitness in order to systematically exclude them without regard to its history or the legacy of gender violence. The church will lie and say that Black women who tell are harming the institution while rendering invisible the primary injury. The church will scapegoat other Black women, self-cannibalizing patriarchs themselves, who do the bidding of structural gender bias for their own perceived gain, but fail nonetheless. The church will blame women for hating women. The church underwrites sorocidal impulses whereby Black women in word or deed actively endeavor to destroy other Black women. The church will ordain certain Black women while isolating others. The church will make an example out of them and make it seem as if she is the only one. The church will call names, i.e. sour grapes, emotional, divisive, etc., and make other personal ad hominem attacks. The church will endeavor to scrutinize Black women's mental wellness with inappropriate and unfounded psychological diagnoses of narcissism and personality disorder. The church will charge her with possessing intractable character flaws. The irony is that my church, in which my paternal family has held membership since the Powell years, and in which I have been a member since adolescence, stood against the subjugation of Black women in the late 20th century in its, however imperfect, endeavor to bulldoze sexist CDs by so-called gangster rappers. But seasons change. And in the 21st century, as heirs of the Black radical Christian tradition, Black women and those who truly love them ought to bulldoze the twin conspiracy of Black woman hate and the discipline of silence perpetrated by some wannabe gangster church leaders and laity that attempt to bully into silent submission anyone who calls into question its tiresome and sinfully consistent misogynoir. This is the word for the people of God. Thanks be to God. I need water. Upon writing these missives, I have watched online folks that I know and folks that I don't know. Either one, be silent. Two, be harmful in their response, engage in behavior that only reveals and makes true the word that has been spoken. And my question to first my primary group, which are Black folk, Black women, Black men, Black non-binary, gender non-conforming folk, and then my secondary group, everybody else, is the question that has been asked already down through time is how long? Maria Stuart asked it when she demanded the daughters of Africa awake and arise. How long will we be silent? How long will our truths be laid in the clanging of pots? Her speaking to this domesticity that Black women were relegated to. How long will we be silent and hide under our associations and hide under or hide beside our proximity? My God. For some, that Dr. Marshall Terman calls in another post, it is the Black women patriarchs who cause the most harm. Without the belief that themselves, or that possession of their spirits has been taken on and or taken over, how long, I ask, will we function in these silos and believe that it is not happening or hasn't happened to us? How long will we use personality or disposition as an excuse not to support the call? Let me run it back. How long will we use personality and or disposition as an excuse and or as a reason for maintaining silence, as a reason for saying that someone deserves a particular kind of treatment, as a reason for being silent about the way that the Black church mimics dominant society in its treatment of Black women? How long, friend? When will we get to the place where we will be able to have a call of community like this, and we will be able to confess our sins? What sins, Melva, are you talking about? Our sins of our desire to be patriarchs. There are black women, black church women, whose desire is to be a patriarch, whose desire is to live into the position of a senior this and a senior that, and to operate in the same way. Y'all don't hear me today. Oh my goodness, how long will we let these indictments only live in our group chats? How long will we be so focused only on our individual circumstance? And it is not that our individual circumstances aren't important, and it is not that many of us do not have specific needs of healing from diseases, chronic illnesses, healing and the ability to be able to move through grief, breakthroughs financially and emotionally. I am not suggesting that any of that is not important, but what I am positing is that possibly our way of going about receiving those kinds of breakthroughs is flawed. That we are only petitioning prayers that will bless us. That possibly if we expanded, if we spoke, if we joined together, if we engaged in collective work and responsibility, if we got some kind of unified position and way to be able to speak to the larger systems at hand, these larger socio-economic, socio-political, religious systems and institutions and systemic issues that as a result trickle down onto us as individuals that create this kind of dis-ease that result in toxicity building up on organs in our body, and because they are not X or size and or expressed, they create these physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental diseases and imbalances that if one way to address is if we gathered, if we spoke radical truth to the tragic power, if we had the ability to turn it upside down and to confess our desire to be the patriarchs and confess that we've grown comfortable in our captivity and to confess that we want to be captive and to confess that we participate in the systems and confess that we have been and confess that we have been the one who blocked. That we've been the one. I don't know if there's anything more painful. I have not experienced, and I've experienced some painful things, and up in my top 3 painful things that I've experienced in my life are black women patriarchs, are black women who perform as liberationists, are black women who perform as womanists, are black women who perform, but their lived experience does not match their espoused ethic. Come on in here today. Come on in here today. Yeah. Yeah. Hey! Their lived experience does not match their espoused ethic. And so what does it look like? It looks like black women. I love you too, Soror. It looks like black women being at tables that their ancestors fought for them to be at. It looks like, hey, God today, Jesus. It looks like black women sitting at tables, having earned degrees, having received the benefits of land that they did not turn turn. Come on, Monique Crane Spells, of soil that they did not turn, being recipients of. It looks like black women being satisfied with only being the first. And the truth of the matter is that they only want to be the first, because if there's a second, third, fourth, and fifth, then they will no longer be the center of attention. What does our song say? Because they are drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee, Ashe. And what is the wine of the world? Well, come on here. What does the fugitive pedagogy tell us? That the wine of the world is what? The dominant protocols of teaching and learning and the narrative scripts that structure these experiences. I am putting forward today that the narrative scripts and structures are problematic. That when black women sit at the table, drink from the cup of patriarchy and white supremacy, and how do we know that they're drinking? By their silence. Let me tell you something. Let me say this to you. For me, for Melva Sampson, and baby, I know I'm all up in your group chats on the tip of your tongue. Why? Because there is no reason to me why the what's his name? Zuckerberg's internet, Facebook, should not have been bombarded, shut down, why this thing don't have 1 million shares, why folks aren't galvanizing and mobilizing and acting, while folks haven't vacated their pulpits to the streets, while a letter hasn't been written asking us to sign it, while folks let their ego to the floor and came to their church and said, we need to have a conversation. There is no reason why. The only reason that I can think of why, I don't care if you talked about it with your girlfriends. I don't care if you talked about it in your group chat. I don't care. I'm talking about on a major scale. There is no reason except for our comfortability, our level of comfort, because activism requires giving up comfort. Listen. Come on in here, Dean Guidry. Yes. Because activism requires more. And can I just get in a little bit more to my super saved people? Can I hit you with one more? I'm just a follower of Jesus. That's, I'm a follower. I'm a follower. I don't know who you're a follower of, but it ain't Jesus. Can I tell you why? Because the followers of Jesus die. Yeah. What? Yeah, honey. Yeah. Yeah. Followers who truly understand what it means to revolt against the system acknowledge that death is inevitable, whether literal or figurative. Followers of the way acknowledge, and this is why it was so costly to identify with Jesus and follow the way. It meant that you were turning your back on the empire. It meant that at any moment, and most likely, you could lose your life. It was not this easy process of you giving your hand to the preacher and your heart to God. No, you had to be, you had to go through a catechism. You had to be online, if you will. You had to make sure, they had to make sure that you could withstand what was about to happen to you. And I'm simply saying that we need to opt not to be silent anymore. We read those words, we heard those words, and those of us who identify as women, those of us who know those words to be true, are the ones who need to be leading the way and standing in solidarity and speaking up and using our privilege and using our platforms and using our proximity to call folks to the carpet. Why is it always those who are at the bottom rung who are screaming the loudest? It is because those who have amassed a level of proximity, a level of relationship, a level of notoriety, a level of celebrity have so much to lose. I have been wounded at by black women. see my dear sister E.I. Renee. I gotta go. I gotta head over to the clearing, y'all. But I see my dear sister Renee. Whew. I gotta head to the clearing so I can cuss like I want to cuss. I say, I have, my goodness, my goodness, my goodness. I have posted this link. My. I have posted the link again for those of you who want to join us in the clearing, to join our subscription community. Ashe. And after you join, if you would just direct message me and I will send you the link. I wanna close this way, because some will see this live and say, well, she just be right, she ranting. What's the rant? What's the rant? What is the rant? Until I have no more breath in my body. But you don't know what it is. Renee. My sister Renee, my elder sister Renee, I have not preached that first African probably since since the last time I preached at First African was probably July 2016. And I didn't preach because a black woman or black women, the patriarchs, the black women patriarchs. See, because here's the other thing. The way that we then have to protect the institution. So the silence, the call outs, that we can't say what it is, and the ways in which folk jump in our inbox and tell us, that you might not pull back a little bit. Now, I'm not saying there is a wisdom to strategy. There is a wisdom, there is a way, absolutely 1,000%. And yet at the same time, what I am telling you is that some things only happen when you call it to the carpet and you name it. I hate when people give you something, they call them giving you some tea, but I ain't gonna say no names. I ain't gonna say no names. Well, who said I don't want to get in it. You already in it. We're already here. We're going to the clearing. We're going to have a conversation. You're welcome to come. We are talking back to Dr. Marshall Thurman's text. We are lifting up what our next steps, how we might best support not only her, but what is our charge moving forward. What do we need to be doing to tell the truth? Yeah. What will be our strategy? Because some will speak out and call it, and then others will be behind the scenes. Come on. I'm simply saying enough is enough. And in the words of Mamie Till, leave the casket open. We're not closing the casket. We're not hushing on how problematic and egregious these harmful ways of this institution has been and is. We are leaving the casket open that the world will see. Hey, my God, we are leaving the casket open that all might see the disfiguration, that all might see the result. We are leaving the casket open. Oh, that those who walk by might be so moved, might be overcome with grief, might be moved into action. We are leaving the casket open on this kind of sexist, misogynistic, every kind of ism. We are leaving the casket open. And we are refusing to be silent. Let the world see, Dr. Marshall Thurman. Let the world see, sis. Let the world see, Ashe. That is the call. I think it was Dr. Brawley or someone said during the Ma'afa last week. Oh, it was Reverend Starsky Wilson. Dr. Starsky Wilson said, he said, prophecy or being prophetic is not a profession. It's a call to commitment and principles. Prophecy, is not, a profession. Prophet such and such, prophet such and such, prophet such and such. But it is a call to commitment and principles. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.